Today we're going to be doing intermediate. I'm going to show you traditional grip and I'm going to show you this is Clayton Skinner. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Beat. Hi there, my name is Clayton Skinner. This is Beyond the Beat. In this episode I'm going to teach you how to add 16th note snare hits to your 16th note hi-hat grooves. The concept of this is actually quite simple. The execution of it will be actually quite tricky. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to be playing or adding 16th note snare hits, meaning whenever you're playing the 16th notes on your hi-hat with your right hand, with your left hand you're going to be adding hits to the E's and Ahs as you go along. We've done this before. We did this in the quarter note hi-hat grooves and in the eighth note hi-hat grooves. It's a little bit easier in those because you didn't have to line it up with anything. In this, you actually have to line it up with something. You have to make sure that if you're playing a nice steady 16th note pattern on here, you line up that 16th note hit, whack, perfectly. Otherwise, it'll throw everything off. I'm going to do these pretty slowly, walk you through every beat individually. So just listen to my demos, and you should have no problem with this, eventually. In previous episodes, involving a similar concept, I've always made lesson A kind of like the, this is all the little places that you could put these 16th note hits. In the quarter note one, we were kind of playing a single stroke roll, being as how you're playing 8th notes on the hi-hat, 16th notes on the snare. Quarter note one, you played kind of like a plinky plunky kind of true story. In this one, it's going to be 16th notes on the hi-hat, and you're going to have to line it up with every 16th note that you're playing. I don't have a fancy name or a fancy acronym for this. The only thing that I want to make sure that I stress to you is that you have to make sure that everything lines up. So this is the second time I think now I've said this in this video. So make sure that everything lines up. Listen to the demo. Yes. Exercise B doesn't have any bass drum in it. It's basically going to be exercise 1, but played without any bass drum. So what I've done is I've added the 16th note snare hit to the E of 1 and the E of 3. And then of course you're going to have the customary snare hits on 2 and 4. So listen to the demo and I'll see you in the next example. C, same concept. There's no bass drum. C is basically number 2 played with no bass drum. In C, I've added the snare drum hits on the Av2 and the Av4, and then of course 2 and 4 as well. So listen to this demo, and then we'll start working on numbers 1 and 2. So now we're adding bass drum. So remember, number 1 is B with bass drum. So it's the same concept. Snare drum is going to be on the E of 1 and the E of 3. And everything else is going to be kind of familiar to you. Bass drum on 1 and 3, snare drum on 2 and 4. So listen to the demo and good luck. Beat 2, again, is less than C with bass drum. Bass drum being on 1 and 3. The 16th note snare hits are on the AV2 and the AV4. Regular backbeat being on 2 and 4. Demo, listen now, bye. So, just for the interest of saving time, all these exercises on this entire exercise or episode have bass drum on 1 and 3. Done. I've said it. I don't need to say it again. Hopefully. Anyway, beat 3 is a combination of 1 and 2. You have the snare drum on the E of 1 and the A of 2. And then, of course, the bass drums and the backbeat are all the same. So check this one out. And again, if you have problems with it, go back to the other exercises, the quarter notes and the eighth note hi-hat stuff, and use those as examples as to how to play it. Because, again, I just took the same beats. I'm kind of wasting time here talking, so get to it. So in exercise 4, I basically just taken the first half of exercise 3 and put it on the second half, creating exercise 4. The 16th notes are on the E of 3 and the A of 4. So again, this is kind of the same pattern as before, except they're not on the same numbers and on the same quarter notes. So if you're actually counting along, it'll be different. If you're not counting along, after a while, it'll kind of sound the same. You should actually make sure that you count along to this, because it's actually quite important that you're able to identify where a bar ends and where a bar begins. Beat 5, I've added the snare drum hits, the 16th note snare drum hits on the A of 2 and the E of 3. So they're kind of surrounding the bass drum that's on number 3. So check out the demo to this, and I'll see you at the next exercise. Exercise 6, we have the snare drum on the E of 1 and then the A of 4. So again, this is kind of the same concept as the last exercise, except I've kind of moved the treble spot or the actual exercise within the bar. In this one, you're going to have kind of a repeating pattern. So you start off, and then when you finish the bar and you repeat it into the next bar, that's where you create the pattern. So check this one out. Make sure you count along to this one, because this is, again, another important counter. You have to know when one bar begins and one bar ends and then begins again. So check this one out. See you at the next one. Number 7 is all the beats that we've done so far, kind of all mashed together as one. Again, like I said before, the bass drum is still on 1 and 3. You still have the backbeat on 2 and 4. But now you have snare drum hits, the 16th note snare drum hits, on the E of 1, the A of 2, the E of 3, and the A of 4. So we create a constant repeating pattern. Make sure that you're able to count this. Even though that it's very repetitive, you should still know where you are and where you're playing, what you're playing. Yes, you get the idea. So, listen to the demo, check it out, see you at the conclusion. So I hope this wasn't too difficult for you. Make sure you take these slowly. You may have to play them a little slower than I played them in the demo. That's okay. And then gradually kind of ramp up the speed. Remember, if you have problems with these, if you're really having problems lining them up, you can go back to the other exercises, like I've said, or the other lessons, and kind of gauge, or not gauge, but use those as an example as to how these are supposed to sound, and then just add the appropriate 16th notes on the hi-hat. Everything is good. Like I said, if this takes you a while, it's not a big deal. These are pretty tricky, and believe me, they're going to get trickier. Well, that's all for now. Make sure you check out my intermediate video, where we dive even deeper into adding 16th note snare hits to your 16th note hi-hat grooves. See you there.